Hey everybody, this is Erik Tryggestad and Audrey Jackson from the Christian Chronicle. We are coming to you from the beautiful city of Łódź, Poland. Don't let the way it's spelled fool you. It looks like L-O-D-Z and is actually pronounced Łódź. So we figured that out. So we have sandwiched in between us Adi Voicu, yeah? Adi, who is a member of the Church of Christ in Craiova, Romania, and he's been our driver for the last week as we've been across Europe, which is our fourth country I think we've been in so far. So it's been an adventure. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be going through some of the pictures here. Audrey has done an incredible job working with Churches of Christ, not only his own congregation, but also the Church of Christ in Cluj-Napoca, which is fun to say, living in Cluj-Napoca. That's our theme song anyway. And they have been taking relief supplies across the border into Ukraine, wrote a little bit about him online and some of the Romanian churches. That's really all we've been able to get up to over the last few days. And have so much more going. So I thought, let's go ahead and share some of our photos and talk a little bit of what has happened, because we've been into Ukraine and back on this trip so far. And now we're kind of on the final leg of it here in Poland. So Audrey's taken some amazing photos, and I'm going to share the screen and we're going to kind of talk you through what's going on here. Here we have, okay, so we'll start at the beginning and jump in anytime you see something that, interests you. This is the line of trucks waiting to get into Ukraine. Is that right, Audrey?
So yeah, that was on the border, and we had just crossed the border on foot. Actually, we were waiting for our driver Dima, and we were presented basically these trucks that go back for miles and miles and miles. I had a zoom lens and I zoomed in and I couldn't see when they ended. So I took this shot, and those have been running relief supplies into Ukraine, and then they line up like that for miles to get back out of Ukraine into Romania to fill up and go back again.
Right. And it's not just relief supplies. Some of these are just the regular commercial goods, I think, going back and forth, but there's quite a line there on the border. And of course, you see guys like horse-drawn carts. You see those across Romania, and then we saw that. Is this one in Ukraine as well?
That one was in Ukraine.
Wow, that was right after we crossed the border. So yeah, we walked across the border. We parked our van, walked across the border. The most amazing thing to me, I don't think we have a shot of it here. As soon as Audie pulled the van up to the border in Romania, I looked behind us and there's like 7 security guys. And I was just like, I've been through border crossings before. Everybody's always really mean, they don't want to be there. They don't want you to, it's just, you pull out your camera, they'll kill you, that kind of thing. These 7 guys are lined up. I said, they're going to go through every single one of our bags. They are going to run us through the ringer. I bet that's what's about to happen. And they're standing there, and Audie comes back and says, they want to see if they can help us take our bags up to the border.
Yeah, because we had to leave the van at the border point on Romanian territory.
Yeah.
And we just unloaded the bags, and they were just kind enough to take it and help us go through the customs with it.
And you told me these guys are they're actually like volunteer firefighters and stuff like that are just doing duty, helping people as they come across the border from Ukraine. And they saw us going into Ukraine. And so they actually grabbed our bags and took them up to the border. And then they kind of was like, okay, we have to leave you now. So we went on through the border. So absolutely amazing experience there. Okay, so this is in Ukrainian and I can't read it, but I believe
that's
this,
the church sign.
The Church of Christ in Chernivtsi.
Yes, Cerkva Kristova.
Okay.
Church of Christ.
This is a town that is about 10 miles, I think, from the Romanian border inside Ukraine. And they've told me that it's one of the few places there have been no bombings there. I'm assuming because it's so close to the Romanian border, an errant missile could easily end up essentially in the EU and start World War III.
And NATO.
And yeah, that's right. That's NATO territory when you cross into Romania. So the folks here have been relatively safe, and this church building has become a haven. It's a beautiful church building, by the way, and they didn't have just a ton of members there, but now it's a refugee relief center. Are these all the Bibles that we picked up?
Those are boxes of Bibles that are in Ukrainian and Russian.
Wow.
And then those are strollers that were donated.
We actually ended up taking some of these Bibles back with us across the border into Romania to give to the refugees there. Is that right?
Yes, the refugee center in Cluj. These were provided by EEM, Eastern European Mission, and they just delivered it over there at Chernitsy building for us to pick up when we were going back into Romania.
So it is interesting that you're taking relief supplies into Ukraine and then picking up Bibles in Ukraine and taking them back into Romania.
And people many times.
Yeah, and sometimes people too. That's right. So how many of these supply runs have you made into Ukraine, do you think? Have you lost count?
12, 15, yeah, I've lost count. And Dragoș Vintilă of Church of Christ in Cluj rode with me there many times with his own car and trailer. We basically had like 1.5 tons of supply in each of our vehicles every single time in the trailer. Take supplies in, take people out.
Supplies in, people out. And this is the, essentially it's become a camp inside the church auditorium there for some of these Ukrainian refugees. And there you can see they take these mattresses and mats and stack them up on the wall on Sundays for times of worship. So this is how they're living right now. And they're kind of just, we talked to some of them. They said they're just kind of waiting to see what happens next. Not really sure when this will end. So love that shot there. That's really good.
It was during prayer and they were sporting Romans 12:12 bracelets.
Romans 12:12. Oh, wow. Yeah. Which is, does anybody know? Let's look it up real quick. Romans 12:12. Somebody look it up. So
But these were those were our Ukrainian drivers actually who took us on further into Ukraine, and they've been making relief runs to towns that are more affected and impacted by the war.
I'm paranoid that we're not recording. How do I tell?
Well, now that's in the recording. Now everyone's going to know that you're paranoid.
Everybody now is in the recording that I'm paranoid that we're not recording. I think we're recording. I hit the record button. So, but it just says I'm screenshot. There's a little thing, that little thing beeping right there, or yeah, maybe that means we are recording. Okay, we're going to assume we are and move on.
Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, giving to hospitality.
Oh my goodness. How apt. What an appropriate verse. Okay, so we move on. That was our last picture from Chernitsy. Now we moved on to another city. This is Ivano-Frankivsk, a city in the western part of Ukraine. And one of the first things we saw as we pulled up to our hotel was these sandbags that have been put around the statues there to protect them in the event of a bombing. And we saw several sites like this around town. You see, but we went through a military checkpoint to get there. You see a lot of kind of little bunkers made out of sandbags in the area and all kinds of stuff like that. So just telltale signs. Other than that, though, it was amazing. You see people out in the streets buying ice cream, street artists were performing music. And one of them was doing the Cranberries song Zombie when we walked by. Which is that one, that's an Irish group, and it talks about war with their tanks and their bombs and their bombs and their guns. So it was like, wow, that kind of tells the story right there. And then Audrey, this is kind of interesting. We ran into this little site.
Yeah, so this was downtown in kind of the city center. We were walking around, and then there was a big fountain that's to the right of that photo that's not pictured. Mm-hmm. But I saw this clothesline basically of photos that was strung up across this little alcove, and I walked over, and Audrey explained to us that these are very famous media images that are kind of circling in Ukraine and Romania and the EU right now that have come out of Ukraine. And someone had put them on kind of weather resistant material and strung them up across, and they'd put candles as kind of just this place to remember and think about the war and the people that are affected by it.
Yeah, so it's never far away. You're very much aware that you're there. And of course, here's the other sign.
And while we were down there, actually, we were looking at those photos. Fighter jets went overhead and they were really low to the city. And I thought, oh, that's neat. And then I had a moment of going, is that neat? And are those Ukrainian?
It's like, yeah.
He's a friend of hope.
Yeah. And then no one else panicked.
No one else is freaking out. So we're like, okay, we're gonna assume.
Okay, they must be on the good side.
They must be on the Ukrainian side. So yeah, that's what we see. The ministry that we visited in Ivano-Frankivsk is coordinated by the guy saying the prayer here. This is Dima Grischuk. He's a friend of mine from years ago. I've known him since 2003 when he was over in Donetsk, Ukraine in the east, which is a separatist region now. He's been moved. He says he's lost his home twice, and now he's living out of Ivano-Frankivsk. He is coordinating a transportation ministry where they take relief supplies from places like Ivano-Frankivsk into some of the hard hit parts of Ukraine. They've gone to Dnipro, I think. I think they've gone to some of the other places that
That
gone
hit hard.
yeah, and they've gone to Kyiv, obviously, and
They've
then
got their ways in and
Poltava.
out, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they drop off supplies and they ferry people back to the relative safety of places like Ivano-Frankivsk and Chernivtsi. And
some
then
of them end up with us because actually on our last trip there, he
Mhm.
brought a lady that then I took back to Romania. And it was amazing how this whole chain works. And we had no connection, basically. I've been asked by a totally stranger to bring her mama back in Romania. And then I found out that Brishuk actually brought her mama to Chernivtsi. So
Oh,
no
wow.
connection in there. And we just tied together.
it's been amazing to see the way that our Romanian brothers and sisters in Christ have gotten to know the Ukrainians. I mean, if anything good has come out of this terrible situation, I think it's the connections that are being
between
made
the
there.
countries.
And the realization that we are really part of a universal fellowship in Churches of Christ. So that's been good to see. There was a dinner for the drivers that we went to in Ivano-Frankivsk, right outside the town. And it was really nice. It was at they called it a barbecue restaurant, but it's a ton of grilled meats. I mean, it was reminiscent of a Brazilian churrascaria, if you've ever eaten at one of those places, but they brought it all on plates. And you're just like, we're in a war and we're having this nice banquet.
You have to keep in mind the fact that this was probably their first proper meal
Yeah.
in like 2 months or so. 'cause
Exactly
they've
what I
been
was-
running like crazy.
Yeah, and exactly what I was going to say. And I got a reminder of that almost immediately. The gentleman on the left here, his name is Artum, and he was in Mariupol. And the guy on the right, that's Brandon Price, who is with us on our touring group. He is the administrator for the Ukrainian Bible Institute in Kyiv. He and his family had to evacuate Kyiv and go to Sopot here in Poland. He's taken his family back to the US, and now he's back with us touring all of these ministries that are helping out. He speaks fluent Russian, so he was able to translate here for Artum. One of the most powerful, and Artum talked about the experience they had in Mariupol, talked about how they were having to make cooking fires and get by on a cracker and a piece of meat a day, how their kids were almost starving. So yeah, so you're sitting there at this plate of meat, giant pile of meat there, and you think, wow, this seems extravagant. But then you hear about what these guys have been through, and you're like, man, just let me help you. Here, take, eat. I felt guilty for taking up his time to hear his story because I'm like, dude, you guys need to eat. Like, take as much of this as you can. So, I mean, it was a powerful story. And one of the most powerful things that Artum said to me, she said that Vladimir Putin is basically trying to portray himself as a liberator of the Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Well, he is a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. He said, oh, it's working very well. The war has liberated me from my home. It's liberated me from my car. It's liberated me from my job. And it's liberated me from my family. His family, I believe, is over somewhere in Europe right now.
Either Croatia, either
I
Poland,
think he said Czech Republic. I think they're in the Czech Republic. But so yeah, so he shared his, I mean, and it was a harrowing story. I've got notes. We'll be writing about that as we go on. And it was, I mean, poor guy, I barely let him get to his food. So this is a picture of all the people that kind of assembled for the dinner. I also want to say, I was really impressed to meet a lot of guys with a group called the Program for Humanitarian Aid, which is based out of College Station, Texas. They had a center in, I think it's Zaporozhye. They were caring for orphans there, and they've really gotten involved in getting stuff across the border as well. And they're setting up with a warehouse in Siret in Romania, right next to the border. And they were getting all that set up while we were there. So those guys on the left, you can see the
Hawaiian shirt.
The Hawaiian shirt. That's Jerry, right?
Yeah.
And this guy,
Wes.
I forgot Wes in the Beat Bama shirt because he's a Texas A&M guy. So we had that in common. Sorry, we love our Bama fans that we got out there. But yeah, so that was kind of a group photo of all of us that attended the dinner there. And you can see behind that is one of the vans that the guys are using. Oh, I'm glad you put this photo in. You walk through the downtown Ivano-Frankivsk and they've got the distances from there to other parts of the world. And this one is to Minsk in Belarus, and they've written a bunch of eggs. They didn't even have Moscow on this thing, but yeah, you notice that's Minsk in Belarus. That's been X'd out. That's been X'd out. So, and then we see relief service tents. I mean, the Maltese folks are trying to help out as much as they can. Oh, and then we had these street musicians that Audie you made a request, told them you were from Romania, and they knew a Romanian song or something like that. That lasted about 15 minutes. I kept saying, and he's playing this fiddle like it goes faster and faster and faster. I'm like, certainly he's like, this is the big denouement or whatever. And then nope, there's more to it than that. So, but you said he got it right. We're trying to remember. We're trying to remember the name of the song. So anyway, next, she's carrying a book on her head. That's cute.
She was showing off her balancing skills.
Very good. These are the daughters of the minister from Poltava, whose name escapes me at the moment, who's one of the drivers. He was hilarious. He got up and talked during the church service there in Ivano-Frankivsk. And yes, there you go. And their kids love what's going on. This is a lady in the church. Is she one of the ones that asked for prayers? I can't remember. Is her son in the military?
No, she asked for general prayers. The other lady was the one whose son was in the military. I actually came up to her and asked her after the service if she was okay and why she'd been crying. And she said, "Oh, nothing's wrong, no worries. I cry all the time these days."
Oh man. Yeah. It was an emotional service there in Ivano-Frankivsk at the Church of Christ there.
This is the lady who her son is on the front lines fighting with the Ukrainians, and she was the one who was asking for prayers for his safety.
Right. And she talked about having a vision of goblets filling up with the prayers of the saints, and how one was only halfway full and a monster came and knocked it over. And so I think the message was keep praying, I think, basically, if you had to summarize it. So these are great shots, Audrey. I'm glad we brought you along on this old junket.
So these are great shots, but I love these photos in particular because this was after the service. Everyone had been talking for about 30 minutes and everyone had relaxed. They had some coffee, they had some cookies. I was in the middle of eating shortbread and I look over and someone had broken out. These are first aid kits for the front lines. So they got tourniquets, other things that are necessary. And someone had brought them just in a backpack and they were hastily repacking them to go with one of the drivers who was about to depart.
Very good. I apologize if you're hearing a vacuum in the background, by the way. It's cleaning time here in Łódź, and there you go. So here we are loading. This is us back in Chernivtsi loading up the Bibles to take across the border. Oh, good shot from inside the van. Very cool. I'm just seeing some of these for the first time. So if look, that's neat. That's in case you're really thinking you need that kind of commentary. Oh, there's a picture of me doing something.
You were taking a picture of the prayer, but you were in my way of getting a picture of the
So
prayer,
you're like,
so I took a picture of you instead.
Like, forget it, Tryggestad. You're just gonna have to be in the photo. This is a good one too. These are some of the border guards on the Romanian side.
Yes.
After we went back through. It was pretty easy getting back through it was quite an experience coming back through the border. We were prepared for like maybe a 2-hour wait. It's what we've been told. For some reason, it's Sunday and some people are starting to return to Kyiv, whether they should or not, we don't really know. But it was very slow that day. Not slow getting across, but there just weren't many people there. And we really breezed right. Yeah, we breezed right through. And we were kind of waiting for, I think we were waiting for you to pull up the van to get us.
With Dima, yes, with the van.
Yeah, and even the van that you guys drove through got through pretty quick.
Fast, yeah.
And it was amazing. As soon as we're on the other side, I get a little emotional thinking about this. We had all these people coming up to us. Are you okay? Or is there anything we can get you? Do you need a ride? Do you need a place to stay? And as soon as I opened my mouth and they realized we're Americans, they're kind of like, oh, never mind. These are NGO guys. But they're still like, well, look, we got coffee over here because there weren't many people there. There are all these folks from all these different countries. We met a woman from Portugal who's helping out one of the aid distributions. And we went up and got coffee from a priest of some kind.
Yes.
He was in all of his liturgical garb and he gave us coffee.
And they have tents for everything. They have tents for you to help sort your documents. They have tents for food, resources, if you need a place to stay, if you do need rides, if you need connection points. They have tents for the animals if your pets need passports or if you need to leave your pet with someone.
Romania has rules about passport for pets.
Yes.
Is that a thing? That's the thing. So they want to make sure that their pets and they'll get them. They'll get them all. So yeah, I mean, veterinary services are a big deal. There's been a lot of pets coming through the border. There's Audie loading or unload. What are we doing
We
there?
were unloading at the hotel that night.
Oh, okay. All right. And those are all the
So you saw
Bibles. So, oh, and there we are driving along. Who is this?
This is one of the Ukrainian refugees that was staying in storage containers at the town that I've forgotten. because
Oh,
there's
that's
so many.
right.
Kosice.
Yeah, this is after we
Slovakia.
got back. We went up to Slovakia and we met this lady. She's staying in a facility. It's kind of run by the city.
Yes.
And
City
our
land, city containers.
our
Living
brother,
containers.
yeah, and our brother in Christ,
Peter.
Peter, whose name eluded me for a second, is helping out with this effort. So he got us in to kind of talk with some of the folks there. Oh, and this was tough. This was a lady from
Irpin.
Irpin, which you probably heard on the news outside of, it's a place that Ukraine's
north
back
from
in
Kiev.
control of it now, and they're finding all of the dead bodies there, and that was where it was hit really hard. I was there in 2015 for a singing event for Churches of Christ there. So it's just the fact that that's back in the news now.
And in this photo, she was describing to Brandon, who was acting as our translator because he knows Russian, the size of the holes that are in her house,
Mm.
like the walls, because it got bombed.
And she says that she wants to go back, but the people have been so nice to her in Slovakia. She doesn't know.
And she doesn't know how much she has to go back to.
Yeah, and doesn't know what they're, and so they're just kind of waiting, And so they bring a lot of games for the kids and stuff like that. We had a couple of boys were there playing games and eating cereal.
And then this was her daughter.
Oh, okay. You guys got to talk to her daughter a little bit.
A
So,
little bit.
yeah. Every time we look, Audie, you're right there with the kids, man, playing with them. Just it's really cool. And this young woman is a coordinator. I talked to her, who's from, she's from somewhere in Western Ukraine. And she was a student in Kosice in Slovakia when all of this started. And now she's a volunteer helping in the resettlement efforts. So we got to talk to some of them for a little bit. They even have, this is kind of like a community swimming pool that they've turned into a refugee center. So there's an actual place where they can come and get food when they show in.
It's located directly between the bus station and the train station. So it's kind of the perfect location for refugees.
Yeah. So there we get the shots of that. Oh yes, and they're bringing in mattresses for some of the folks in need, and one of them fell off the thing.
And that's the train station.
That's the train station there that they go to. Okay, very good. This is kind of a little side trip we did that doesn't relate to ministry for Ukrainians, but
This was right outside Kosice.
yeah, Peter told us to go. Peter had a friend tell him to go and talk to these guys, a Catholic church that is ministering inside they call them the Roma, I guess,
Yes.
commonly known as gypsy communities that are kind of squatters in these apartments. And so we got to see a little bit of this and see a place that the Pope visited recently, this kind of church building in there. This guy had photos of the Pope on his cell phone, which I thought that's pretty interesting.
And the selfie.
Yeah, but this is, it was really like, just heartbreaking to kind of see the living conditions of these gypsy communities there. And Audrey got a few photos there. Is that the last of them?
I think it was the last one.
Okay, well, any other reflections you guys want to share? And it does say we're recording. Yay! This hasn't all been in vain. But as we close out here, anything you want to say about impressions you got in this trip, things that have defied expectations, anything like that? Like I said, it's been incredible to meet these people and see the way that everyone is working together through this horrible time. And what happened in 2014 when there was this initial unrest in the Donbass region, a lot of our brothers and sisters in Christ went to Western Ukraine and actually revitalized some of the churches there. And now churches of Christ throughout Europe are filling up with these Ukrainian refugees. So who knows, what's going to happen to that? That's the one big takeaway that I've gotten from this trip. Anything you guys want to add?
Well, it's funny going back through all these photos because you're seeing people that, you know their names, but you can't recall them. You see towns you've been to, but you can't recall them because we've been traveling so much. We've only stayed 2 nights in 2 places.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time we've been on the road.
Yeah, we've only stayed in the same place for 2 nights in a row at one point. Otherwise, it's been a different location every day.
Which
So,
Audie is familiar with because he's been making these runs. I think what you said, you see your family once a week,
Once a
typically?
week during the weekend, yeah.
because he's driving so much
Mhm.
doing relief efforts and taking refugees to and from the border.
yeah.
It's actually been like 5 countries, I think, so far. So it's
Mhm.
Romania, it's Ukraine, Hungary, because we
Mhm.
also met in Debrecen in Hungary,
Mhm.
Slovakia, and now Poland. So 5 countries. And if we are to list all the cities and all the churches that we visited, we would probably run out of what?
Run out of
Your
fingers.
your
Yeah.
fingers and my
And
fingers.
Sibiu, it's like, so many.
Bucharest, Pitești, Sibiu,
Pitești, yeah.
Cluj, and then we went in Ukraine in
Mhm.
2 different places.
Mhm.
Then Hungary, Debrecen,
Yeah.
Slovakia.
I'm glad we stopped in
Kosice, now
Hungary.
in Poland, 3-4 places here.
Yeah.
It's been a overwhelming journey just because we got to see the efforts that were made in all of these places. Each place was a little different, but at the end of the day, they all do the same thing. Basically, they just
Mhm.
jump in and they help all of these people, general population and Christians alike. So all of them, literally all of them, with whatever they can, housing, food, transportation, whatever. I think what proves me the most out of this trip and out of this whole situation is just what Philippians 3:20 shows up. When it says, for our citizenship is in heaven. So we're no longer Romanians, we're no longer Americans, we're no longer Ukrainians or Polish people, we are just citizens of heaven. And this created strong ties, strong bonds, new friendships, and just connections everywhere. So Jesus is saying literally that we may get hundreds of mother or father or sister or brothers had actually come alive. So right now, at least me, I feel so blessed that I have so many houses and so many brothers all across Europe, basically.
Yeah.
So I am appreciative of that. We all pray that this whole thing will end soon,
Mhm.
and hopefully we'll all go back home and just rest, because that's what we need right now.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, it just needs rest,
Yeah.
especially them.
I do want to say a lot of folks in the US have been asking me, we want to help. We want to continue helping. What's the best way to do that? We have a link of Ukraine Crisis, How to Help, that lists some of the ministries that are accepting aid, whether it's Healing Hands International, Sunset International Bible Institute, which is sponsoring this trip that Audrey and I are on. And we can't thank them enough for that. Brandon Price is connected with that ministry. Harvey Starling, who is a minister out of the US and works with 7 churches of Christ, including
Romania,
your
including
congregation in Romania. He's collecting as well, I think.
Yes,
He's
yes.
so we'll include that information as well. Be real careful, folks, because one of the things we've talked about on this trip is there's some less than honest actors out there who claim to be some of them are good-hearted folks trying to collect funds for Romania, but they don't really know where to send them, and it's real easy to get snookered, as we say, into something that really isn't helpful, that may be deceptive, but may just be unhelpful. So if you'll kind of stick with the links that we're giving you and let us kind of check them out. If you got any questions, contact us for that. But thank you so much, guys. This has been really good.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to stop this recording, and then we will see you guys down the road a little bit. So this is Erik, Audie, and Audrey reporting from Łódź, Poland. Thanks for being with us.